So I would say we have a pretty good marriage, not a perfect marriage, but a pretty good marriage. Okay, we'll figure it out. We'll see after this episode. But we've made a lot of mistakes over the years, and 18 plus years into this now, we were reflecting on what are the biggest mistakes that we've made, the things that have caused the most pain, have taken us down the wrong turns, the things that we wish we would have done differently, and the things that we've tried to actively improve upon. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode of the 5 biggest marriage mistakes we've made and how we are in process of working on them.
This ought to be fun. Welcome to the Family Goals Podcast. We are Shay and Graham Cochran, and we believe that your family can do things differently. The payoffs are worth it, and the little things can have a huge impact.
So glad to have you back on the show. If you've been enjoying these initial launch episodes, please let us know. If you are a YouTuber, you're watching it on YouTube land, you can let us know by liking it, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment saying, we want more episodes. If you're listening to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It makes a difference with the algorithm. Rate the show, review it, and then let us know. We read these to let us know that you like it. You've been enjoying these initial episodes, because if you don't like these, then we're not going to waste our Friday date day making these for you.
It is Friday date day.
It is date day. It's our favorite day of the week. So that's all I ask of you. And also, I will just say one last thing. Share it. Please share these episodes. Anyone that has a family, that has a marriage, that's actively pursuing these things, we all want to improve. Let's have the conversation spread, because we're not perfect, but we're trying to open the door to important conversations.
Speaking of opening the door,
let's get
to air
real.
our laundry.
Let's get real on today's episode. So we thought we would go through, we don't have time to talk about all the stupid stuff we do and the way we've done it wrong. And everyone's marriage is different. So whether you're married 1 year or 20 years or 50 years, we've all made mistakes. And so we thought we would just air out a little bit of our dirty laundry. Just know that you might not relate to all of our mistakes. You might be like, oh, I don't struggle with that. That's great. Praise
awesome
God.
For you.
But maybe there's one or two that you're like, hey, I relate to that as a couple, or maybe one of you relate, because some of these mistakes are just me versus Shay. My hope is that twofold, and I don't know what your hope is before we jump in, is that A, you'll feel less alone or crazy if you've made mistakes in your marriage. That's sort of the beauty of marriage, is that we're in it to the end, and it's like we're trapped. In a good way. The doors are locked. We're going to stay in the arena and figure it out. So no one expects it to be perfect. So welcome to the club. So hopefully you feel like you're less crazy. And then B, maybe it'll inspire you to think actively about the areas that you want to work on in your marriage, so that if there is an area that's not great, you don't just keep it in the dark. You can at least, maybe don't go on a podcast and tell the whole world like we are, but maybe you just open the door with your spouse and you say, hey, I feel like this isn't the strongest part of our marriage. I'd love to work on this, because we're in it to win it.
Yeah.
That's my hope, at least.
Yeah. My hope is twofold. I think in order for us to gain your trust on this podcast, I think it's really important to us that you know our truest, most authentic selves, that we make mistakes, that we're learning, that we're in process, that life is hard and marriage is hard, and we're navigating that the same way that you're navigating those things. So I think it's incredibly helpful just to see how other people are doing things and how other people are thinking about things, because we all only know what we know, and we know what we've seen and experienced, and we know what we've seen in our parents. And so it's rare to get to really pull back the curtain on somebody else's marriage and the things that they're struggling with and how they're approaching those struggles. So I think, twofold. I want you guys to feel like you genuinely know us and have a take on who we are and our imperfections, and then to really peel back the curtain and see inside somebody else's marriage that just maybe thinks a little bit differently, maybe does things a little bit differently, for better, for worse, and you can take what's helpful and leave what isn't. But even just seeing into it, I think is helpful.
Agreed. All right, here we go. Hope we're still friends after this. Both you and me.
Pinky promise we'll still be friends.
We'll be friends, yeah. Okay, I think the number one thing that came up when we were on a walk and we were thinking through what, if we have to share our 5 biggest mistakes, what would they be? The number one that came up for both of us was that we have constantly made the mistake, as recently as this week, of living in our own separate worlds. And what I mean by that is not that we have separate bedrooms or that we don't literally interact with each other. We love each other. We
Yeah.
hang out a lot, and we enjoy each other's company. And yet, because of a variety of things, we're both entrepreneurs. We're both, I guess, high performers. I hate that term, but like
Sure.
whatever. We're both
Ambitious
to do cool things in the world, and we feel called to do interesting things in the world. With that comes excitement that you think about it. Oh, it's going to be great. So I'm in my head thinking about it, and problems like, oh, I got to solve this. And insecurities like, how am I doing in this? And so those things, whether it's my business or Shay's business or you leading a women's group or me doing something, like we find ourselves historically, it's very easy for us to get in our heads where we can be on a walk together or at the dinner table together. And like, I'm not really there with you. I'm in my own little world. And I process things like internally where like, if I'm struggling with solving a problem or I have an insecurity in my work or in my life, like I just go inward and I disappear like mentally. So I'm around, but Shay's like, where's my husband? And so that living in separate worlds.
It's like you fall into like an internal hole.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
So how would you describe that for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because as you're talking, I'm thinking there's layers to this, right? So you talked about like proximity, and we have a lot of proximity, but that can be a problem in some marriages. Like they don't have any time together.
Yeah.
We have a lot of, like you said, we have a lot of time together. So there's the physical proximity part. Then you get a layer beneath that, and there's like, what are you actually, there's domains, right? Okay. So there's like the domains that you are kind of in charge of in our home, and there's domains that I'm kind of in charge of in our home. And even those things can kind of breed, okay, I'm thinking about different things than you're thinking about. You're thinking about different things. You're thinking about making sure the taxes are being paid. I'm thinking about making sure we have dinner on the table. You're thinking about,
Both are important, by the way.
both are equally important. You're thinking about how the trash needs to be taken out. You're thinking about, the things that you kind of own. And I'm thinking about making sure we have stuff for the teacher gifts this week and stuff with my business, stuff in and around the home. So that's great. It's okay for domains to not overlap, and that's kind of helpful. And we have some shared domains, but then there's a layer beneath that that's like emotionally, are we sharing what's going on in our lives? Like, are we honest with each other about what we're even struggling with? How much are we engaging? How much am I sharing with you what's going on at this level, not just at this level? Work was good. This is what my day was like. And some couples aren't even getting there.
Sure.
We're getting there. There's a lot of dialogue and a lot of communication in our house. But that doesn't always mean that we're sharing the things that are going on really inside, like the insecurities that we're battling or the frustrations that we're battling. So obviously I'm in complete agreement with you. Living in our own separate worlds tends to be a very easy thing for you and I to fall into. And it's evidenced by more time on our phones, probably like when we're together, like you're tending to something, I'm tending to conversations with my friends, you're tending to your things with your people, shutting down, being really quiet when we have time together, not engaging in conversation, not asking good questions to draw each other out. We're just kind of in our own worlds.
One of the things that my personality contributes to this is I so desperately want to look good and right and have figured things out that if I have a problem or an insecurity or a fear or, an uncertainty, I don't want to talk about it with you as my default. I want to solve it and then talk about it, because I don't want to look weak, or like maybe there's also pride. I don't want you to tell me what to do. Like here's the solution to your problem. Why couldn't I figure it out?
Yeah.
Why has she got the solution? Yeah. So I'm sure there's some layers there that I don't think about consciously, but it makes it my default is like, I'm going to figure this out on my own. And then
I'll look awesome.
Then I'll look awesome. Because it's funny, like we do that. Maybe you don't do that, but I do this with other people. I want the world to think I'm awesome. That's why I want my website to look great, and I want my social media to look great, and I want to make a good impression when I meet somebody. But it's like, who do I really care about thinking I'm awesome? It's you. Like, I want you to think that I'm awesome.
I do think you're awesome.
Well, so the problem is, I think the way to make sure that you think I'm awesome is to not bring the mess.
Yeah.
Or if I'm in process, like, all right, I'm just going to go over here in my hole, as you described it, and solve it. Then when I'm no longer in process, then I can be open with you. And that's
that's
one of my
relatable.
struggles.
It's relatable for me in that I know the things that we'll use the word bother you about me or discourage you about me. And I don't want to be those things, right? For the same reason I want to be likable and I want you to enjoy me. And I don't want you to be irritated with me or discouraged about how I'm processing life or that kind of thing. So I'm not very good at it, but my default would be just keep it inside and deal with it and try not to be stressed out. For example, I'm thinking of like when I get stressed out, like I have two choices. I can be stressed out all over the place and it can spill out all over the family. Yep. And sometimes I do that. I'm not very good. I don't have a good poker face, so I'm not very good at hiding things. But internally, what I want to do is like, and when we've gone through hard work seasons, it got to the point where I was like, just don't even ask me about it. Like I don't want to talk about it because I know what's going to come out. And that can be okay. And also it can lend itself to just like, I'm just going to have my own little constructed mental world and an internal and external world over here. And I'll deal with my issues and I'll keep them inside and we'll just live two separate lives under one roof.
That's real.
Yep. All right. Number 2.
We got to fly a little faster. So all I will say also is with each of these is we have not perfectly solved these. No. As I said, this most first one is still recent, like even this week dealing with some of that. So we have not come down from the mountaintop like, hey, check out how awesome we are. We've figured it out. We're just letting you into our world a little bit. So that's something we're actively working on. Yeah. One shared world.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on. Mistake number 2 is related. And this I brought this up because I feel like this is more of my mistake. I don't think this is our mistakes. Okay. I think our personalities are different, but you can disagree. Mistake number 2.
Oh, no, I'll agree with that.
Oh, yeah. I think you figured you would. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. I'm all in. Here we go. Graham's mistake, avoiding conflict and hard conversations. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you do the Enneagram. Shay and I both test as a 3. Sometimes I test as a 1, but I think I test more as a 3, the achiever I want to perform and achieve. But when I read the descriptions of the Enneagram, the number 9 I really identify with, the peacemaker, the peacekeeper, peacemaker.
Don't rock the boat.
Yeah, I don't want anyone upset with me. And when I read some of those descriptions, I'm like, whoa, like that's how I am in marriage. Yeah. So what happens is if I sense that you're upset with me or I sense that like there's something we need to talk about, as much as I want the breakthrough on the other side of what we talk about, the pain of having that hard conversation or stirring the pot, like everything's calm. I just don't want to stir the pot. The potential pain, it might be imagined. That potential pain outweighs the benefit of like if we got through it, because one of my greatest fears is conflict and people being upset with me. And so like, it's hard for me to be like, but it'll be worth it because then we'll have this. I'm like, yeah, but then there'll be conflict. And that's the thing I avoid. So that's only created problems in our marriage, which also relates to the first one. I can just hide in my own world.
Yeah. Man, you're a mess.
This is a great episode. Our episode today was brought to you by.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to add anything to that. I want to let you speak for yourself. But there's likely someone in the marriage who is the other way. And it feels like conflict is okay. And that could be, maybe taken to an extreme. And there may be a very aggressive person. I think there is an extreme approach to conflict. And that's not what I'm saying. But for whatever reason, upbringing, personality, I'm not scared by conflict. I feel safer when I know what's out on the table. I feel very unsafe when Graham's in his head, when he's not talking to me about what's going on. I'd rather hear the hardest thing than not know what's actually going on. I feel like I can handle the worst that you could say, but I can't handle not knowing what's going on in your head. So, praise the Lord, we're different, right? Because if we both were opposed to conflict or afraid of conflict, then we probably would never talk about anything. But we both, fight for that middle ground. But I really do feel like conflict is a normal part of marriage. Conflict is an important part of two different people becoming one person. Even on a team, right? Like conflict is what helps us to together arrive at a better place than we would have arrived at on our own. So I see the value and I feel the intimacy even in conflict. Like at least we're talking, at least we're approaching each other. So yeah, that's too bad for you. That you don't like,
Thanks.
So what's our solution to that? I mean, I feel like we can go through phases where we'll avoid the conversation.
Sure.
I think eventually we do tend to have the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's to our benefit, is that we do eventually arrive there.
Yeah.
But the times when we don't are probably the times where there's the most collateral damage, when things just go on for days and days and days.
This is a tricky one, but I think like you said it, you view conflict as an opportunity for intimacy in that at least we're connected.
Yeah.
And connection is what the marriage needs. And I view conflict as a thing that could hurt the marriage.
Yeah.
And so it's a false belief of, if I keep the waters calm and don't talk about it, we're closer, we're safer.
Yeah.
And you're saying it's like the opposite.
Well, especially when you couple that with you going into your own head, then it's like there's just more distance. If you've kept it from
sense.
My side of things, there's more distance, which then becomes more and more scary. And I can fill the distance with all of my fears and all of my
if there's a
thoughts and all
vacuum,
of
you'll
my
fill it with,
assumptions.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if, our experience, we've talked to people who couples where it's like once this kind of conversation comes out, you realize, she's the conflict avoider or he's the like, it's very common that one of the two of you is conflict avoidant and the other one is more okay with conflict. Still, you still have to learn how to handle conflict well. And so we're still working on that. But I know that's just a mistake that I bring to the marriage because it prohibits that connection.
And I think that there has to be the qualifier of you do, and you're kind of alluding to this, like you do have to learn how to have conflict well.
Yeah.
So we're not, I wouldn't be like, what I'm grateful for is that we have created a safe place for conflict. So conflict in our home does not involve yelling.
Right.
That's just never been a part of 18 years of marriage. Like, I don't know that we've ever, I think I yelled at you one time in 18 years.
Yeah.
Unless I'm forgetting anymore. But yelling.
Twice.
One
a long time ago, one like last year.
I don't remember the long time ago.
It was like in our first house.
Okay. Well.
That's the only time I went and slept in the guest room.
I don't even remember that. That's funny.
But
you slept on the guest room couch?
Yeah, like we just lost it. And
must have been bad.
Yeah, but then you came in and like we apologized and stuff.
Oh, I do remember that. Man, that was a big one.
That was a big one.
Okay. But what I'm grateful for is that blowouts are not the norm.
Yeah.
I mean, yelling is not the norm. Us using our words to like get at the other person and win, like that's just not our style. I think because of the homes that our reactions to the things that we grew up with, we just do things a little bit differently. So you do have to create a safe space for conflict. And I feel like we have at the very least over all these years finally created a safe space for conflict, but that doesn't remove the ways that you feel about it.
Just my own fears,
But it's not, it's not any kind of conflict is good. It's like well-managed conflict is really good.
Yes.
And I always do feel more connected to you after we like have those deep conversations.
Yeah,
especially if I win them.
Yes.
I mean, especially if we reach a resolution.
This is recorded for all time.
Number 3. You want me to take number 3?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so number 3 is one that we have struggled with since literally the day that we got married, I think, and still struggle with to this day. And that is really honoring each other's love languages.
The mistake is we don't.
Not honoring each other's love languages, I should say. And I know there are maybe a few people out there that don't believe in the love languages.
Can you just share what they are if people don't know what the love languages are?
If you've been living under a rock and you've never heard Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, I feel like I heard that there was another one added. I feel like food should be added. But the ones that I remember are like physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, quality time, acts of service. That's right? It. Okay. So operating under the assumption that you believe in love languages, which we do, I think we realized very early on that we both have different love languages. And in fact, we're like extreme opposites love languages. So
worst case scenario.
Absolute worst case scenario. So Graham's love language is words of affirmation, was his highest ranking. So if you do one of those, we've actually taken at some point some kind of assessment. His highest one is words of affirmation. His lowest one, wait for it, is physical touch. My highest one is physical touch. And my lowest one is words of affirmation.
That sums up our marriage.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
So what is hard is that still years and years and years and years. I mean, if we add in dating, we've been together for 21 years. It is still very hard for us to acknowledge and honor and action towards each other's love languages. I know that you need words of affirmation, and that words of affirmation make you feel loved and cared for and safe, and kind of like give you what you need to go out into the world and do what you need to do. And it's so hard for me because I'm like, talk is cheap. Like, words don't matter. It's really what you do. It's not what you say. I just apply how I feel about words of affirmation, which isn't probably even entirely true. I do value words of affirmation at times. I just tend to distrust them and I'm skeptical of them. But I apply how I think of it against you. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't want that. Or I give it to you enough because I think I do. Or remember that time last week when I said something nice about you?
What
Like,
else do you
shouldn't
want?
that apply?
Good
Like,
grief.
do I need to tell you again? And for how many years do I need to tell you the same thing? And I think the same is true for me. Like,
Right? Yeah, can we just flip it? I
ahead.
touched you last month. I held your hand last year. What else do you
remember I
need?
put my arm on your
Yeah.
back that one time?
Yeah, exactly. That's how ridiculous it sounds. Like, I feel stupid
And
when
you're
we
like,
talk
but
about it.
Graham's
But it's,
like, but I just don't think about it. I'm sorry,
Never-
babe, but I just don't think
Yeah.
about it. And I'm like, well, freaking think about it, please. I'm dying over here. Dying on the vine over here.
Hey, I hope that you're loving this episode. But listen, what we really want to do is save you from one more boring night of tech gather time spent scrolling your phone side by side. We have a better idea. Okay, we've created 5 absolutely foolproof conversation prompts to help you connect with your spouse today.
Yeah, these are like literally fill in the blank easy. Simple questions, nothing heavy, nothing too serious. These are light and fun to do exactly what they say, to help you connect. So to get these free conversation prompts, just go to familygoalspodcast.com/connect. They're free, they're fun, use them today. Now, back to the episode.
so we don't have time to get into this, but like, think about how dangerous this can be.
Yeah.
In our situation, I'm a words of affirmation person. I've been on YouTube and doing podcasting and blogging for
You
14
love
years.
words.
Well, no, I'm putting out content in the
Oh,
world,
okay.
and there's literally hundreds of thousands of subscribers
Mhm.
and probably millions of people that I've interacted with or influenced
Mhm.
who will leave me messages every day. Graham, you're
Graham,
so awesome.
You're the smartest man I've ever
Oh,
met.
Men and women, doesn't matter. Just like, I'm getting
You're
praise
so-
and words of
yeah.
affirmation. And then if I don't get that from my wife,
Yeah.
I'm like, what's her problem? All these people think I'm great. And you look at me like, hey, trash. The trash is overflowing.
That is not true.
Rub my back. When have you last touched me? That's what this is a caricature, but like,
It's true.
imagine
And-
how
and
dangerous
what I've
that
literally
can be.
said is like, well, babe, because I feel like I use words of affirmation all the time, but it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you feel in it. In this regard, this is your love language. You have to be the one that feels loved by it. But I'm like, how can I shout louder than the hundreds and thousands of people out there who are ready to tell you that you're the best thing since sliced bread? Like, I can't compete with that.
Mm.
But I can't use that as ammunition to then not participate in words of affirmation. Like, I still am responsible for loving you in a way that feels meaningful for you. And I think the way that I think about it is like, we're each a plant. And just because you watered the plant yesterday doesn't mean you don't water it today. Like, the plant is either being sustained or
Mm.
growing, being nourished, being fed, being,
Good.
the soil's being amended, or it's not. And if you could have taken the best care of the plant a few months ago,
Yeah.
but if you're not taking care of it this week,
Daily.
it's dead.
Wow.
Right. So I think we both need, and I've been reflecting on this, that this, was something that I was thinking through this week.
Mm.
Like, I think we have to think of each other as that plant. Like, okay, yes, I watered Graham yesterday, but I got to water him today.
Yeah.
I got to like give him that nutrient that he needs. And yes, just because you hugged me 3 days ago, I'm gonna be dead in a few more days. I'm gonna be dead. So there has to be that like everyday care, everyday deposit. So we win when we do that, and we don't do that very well. So usually
Yeah.
we just, anyway, we're working on it.
We are working on it.
That's gonna be the way we wrap
We're
up
gonna
each
be like
of these.
we're
We're
gonna be
working
like
on
80
this.
years old and still
Okay.
be like, oh man, what's your love language? Okay, mistake number 4. The way I put this is the mistake is being selfish during hard seasons. And what I was thinking of with this is, like in life and in marriage, there's going to be seasons, where the other person needs more care.
Yeah.
They might be going
It's
through.
not 50-50.
No, 50-50
situation.
is a losing proposition, as in The Go-Giver, one of the greatest books, which is really about business, but there's a great line about marriage. 50-50 is a losing proposition. It's 100-100. And sometimes the other person can't give much because they're going through physical pain or emotional pain or hard stuff at work or just a different, whatever reason. There's, what it's like when the other person might need more care in that season than you. And because you love each other, your initial response is to like, let me serve you, like whatever it is you need. The problem I have found is that when I run out of that desire to serve Shay, when it's like, okay, this has been going on for a few months, and like I've been trying
I need you to get your ish together.
and it's sad when
It's time for it to be back about me.
Well, it's just sad when you realize what you think is sacrificial love is sacrificial up to a point, and that it has a limit. And you're like, wow, I've reached that limit. Like I really am tired of doing this, or it's time for me to get some love, or for me to get the attention, or it's my turn. And it doesn't come consciously, but it happens. And so when we were thinking about what are the hardest moments, what's happening that leads to those moments, that's the mistake. For me, that's when I made a mistake, is when I realized I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's out of selfishness. And I was thinking about 1 Corinthians 13, where Paul writes about love. This is a famous passage. You've probably been to weddings.
Any wedding you've ever been to, you
even
probably
if
read
they don't
this
love
passage.
Jesus or read the Bible, like the love is patient, love is kind. It's a beautiful passage. And it's very humbling when you realize, am I patient? Am I kind? Do I keep records of wrong? I do. I'm a mess. But love endures. Love never fails.
It's long-suffering.
It's long-suffering, meaning like you could be kind and patient and sacrificial and you don't keep record of wrongs. You could do that for 5 months.
But what about the next 5?
But what about the next 5? It's like whenever you give up, like that's when you realize, wow, I don't embody that perfect love, which he's talking about, Christ. But man, that's when it falls apart. And it's like, this is where marriage is so hard for me, is that like, I can think I'm doing a great job, but I have limits. Yeah. And it's like, can I keep loving sacrificially, or when's the selfishness going to show up? That's what I thought of.
Yeah, this is hardest for me when, especially in the area of your work or the things that you're, pivots in business or things you're thinking through, insecurities that you have. We both have our own independent insecurities, but we can have talked about it, and I can be like so all in the first hour or the first time, and then the second time I'm not quite as gentle and asking kind questions and sitting with you in it. And by like the third time we're having this conversation, I'm just like, what the heck? I'm done. We talked about this. I already gave you the solution, Graham, is how my selfish brain works. Is like, I already solved this for you. Like, we already talked about it, or you already came to your own conclusion, right? It's like, why are we still having this conversation again? But I've been on the receiving end of being hard to be around for prolonged periods of time, and being the recipient of, at times, the opposite of that, the grace of like, I'm so sorry that this was hard again today. Yeah. Like I'm really sorry about that. Yeah. We've both done it. We've done it well at times, and we've done it really poorly at times.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what you do about that. I ain't got a tight little,
you just keep trying.
little tweetable for you, but it's one of those things that marriage has given me an opportunity to realize how prideful and selfish I am. It's
both of us.
It gives you the opportunity to like, it reveals the things like, you think you're a caring person, and it's not, I don't view this as like God being like cruel or like wagging his finger, but it's just that growth opportunity of, hey, this is where you thought how loving and how much care you show, but you've got a limit here. And now you've seen where that limit is. And can we work on that?
Mhm.
And if you're in this for the long haul, if the doors are locked and we're in this arena together for
Yeah.
the next 80 years, like, what are you going to do to become better? And
Yeah. I keep trying to hide a smirk because all I can think about is ask any woman what it's like when your husband is sick for more than one day. Like, you can be nice for one day. You can like bring him chicken soup for one day. If it goes on longer than that, it's like, pull yourself together.
Take some frickin' Dayquil.
Gone.
Oh.
I don't get a day off. Anyway,
How often do
That's-
I get sick?
you don't, babe. You're because I keep you so healthy.
Oh, there you go.
See how I claimed that?
I was about to claim it that I'm doing you a favor. Like, I refuse to become sick so that you don't have to have the chance to get upset at me. Let's
Oh,
wrap this up
man.
with the 5th mistake. And I'm sure we have more.
Oh, for sure we have more.
We just feel like we're going to cap it at 5. So this is not the longest episode in the world. And this is the mistake, is especially in the early years of our marriage, not prioritizing the care of the marriage over family, life, business, whatever.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say, what do you disagree?
No, do it. I just was going to jump right in with an example. I'm sorry.
Go for it. You're hot to trot. Go for it.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to learn to be better by interrupting. I'm doing a terrible job. Okay. This was especially true in the early years of our marriage when the kids were little.
Yeah.
And life was disproportionately exhausting and unfair. This is like when we had
Frustrating AF.
a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and like I'm nursing all the time, and that you were trying to work from home in that like tiny little office that was
Oh my
right off of
gosh.
the living room. So you were hearing kids crying all day, and it was a tough season. It's a tough season. When you have little kids, it's very physically demanding. For all of you that have little kids right now, just know it gets easier. It gets far less physically demanding for sure. It gets easier, but those early years with young kids, it's just like, you get the diapers. Okay, you do this. All right, I'll put this one to bed. All right, I'll do bath time. Okay, you cook dinner. I'll take that one outside because they're losing their minds. I'll do this. You call your, it's divide and conquer, right?
Yep.
And that's true when you have one kid. And then it becomes even more true when you have 2 kids. And I can't even imagine how people survive marriage with more than 2 kids.
Yep, that's why we
3, 4,
stopped.
5. That's why.
We're like, wow,
we
2's harder than I
tapped
thought.
out. So in those early years, there's so much that's physically demanded of you and of your time with young kids that I remember what it felt like when we went through that season where we were having conversations like, I just feel like we're partners. Like, I feel like we're good. We're really good teammates.
Yeah.
But I don't like you. I don't know why. I don't know if I like you. I don't feel like I love you. I don't feel connected to you.
Yeah.
I'm not like I don't feel like you're my lover. I feel like you're my teammate or my partner. And we were
Yeah.
really good partners. Like, legitimately, you were a very helpful husband. I never felt like I was alone in the child rearing. But that's not enough to have a healthy, connected, intimate relationship with each other. We were good partners. But if that's all you are is just good partners living under the same roof, good teammates, that's not a marriage. That's a
Yeah.
roommate.
Yeah.
That's like a compatible roommate.
Yeah.
And there were certainly seasons that we went through where it felt like, wow, we're just roommates.
Yeah.
We're good roommates.
Yeah, it makes me think of Mark Driscoll used to teach that there's 3 kinds of marriages. There's a back-to-back marriage, which is what you can imagine, like we are opposed to each other, like literally back-to-back. Like, I'm not looking at you. Then there's shoulder-to-shoulder marriages.
We're a good team.
We're a good team. We're
That was
crushing it
us.
together. But then there's face-to-face marriages. And it's like,
Yes.
yes, soul staring.
Looking
or
into
whatever.
each other's eyes.
Gosh. But that felt like a shoulder-to-shoulder season in a marriage
sure.
where like we weren't at each other's throats. We were very much on the same team.
Yeah.
And we were
helping
we were
each
doing what
other.
we had to do, but we weren't prioritizing the care of the marriage. Going back to your plant analogy, we weren't watering the plant.
Mhm.
And so you can think like, we're doing great. But if you're not watering the plant of your marriage, like give it some time and you'll start to see it erode. You realize that the soil is like dry,
Right.
and hard and
Resentment,
cracked. Yeah.
disconnection.
So
I mean, if we're being honest, like the place you're going to see it come up first is sex. You're just going to stop having sex because
Sure.
you don't feel intimately connected to each
Yeah.
other. And at least speaking from a woman's perspective, like if I don't feel like we're emotionally connected,
Yeah.
I don't want to be physically connected. Even though physical touch is my love language,
yeah.
like the intimacy, the
Yep.
emotional intimacy has to come before the physical intimacy for me. So I think that's where you see couples just like, we're just not having sex anymore. It's because We don't enjoy each other. We're not emotionally
And
connected
you're
with
freaking
each other.
exhausted.
You're freaking exhausted.
So that's a bad combination.
It's a terrible
You
combination.
got no energy. You fall into bed and you're like, maybe
Yep.
tomorrow or, you
Yep.
know. So I don't remember the exact ages that we were at when the kids were at when we decided to do this, but one of the only solutions we have for you today,
Here, we came up with one solution for you.
and it's not going to solve all things, but this is
Might solve, actually. I mean,
It could.
it actually could.
It
This
could
could be
have
the
a dollar.
one keystone habit that changes all of it.
I believe we were I think it was Wes and Ann we were talking to even.
Okay,
where
I was
we got the
thinking
idea
of
from.
Dr. Evans that kind of mentored you for a minute and brought up that was the Sabbath. That was Friday
Oh,
Family
yeah,
Fun
that was
Friday.
Family
we
Fun
used to
Friday.
say.
Yeah, that was-
Sorry, go ahead.
But no, my brother Wes and Ann, his wife, they got married a couple years after us, but had kids right away, and so our kids were on very similar ages when we were raising them and getting started. And I think it was just a one-off conversation with them of like, hey, we just committed to a weekly date night and just got a babysitter like on retainer.
And like in the middle of the week, so
Well, that's what
making
I was
that
gonna say.
babysitter more likely to be available.
That's what they were saying is like,
Yeah.
hey, like don't try to do date nights on the weekends. Like find a young teenage or preteen in your neighborhood.
Mhm.
It's like, look,
Just show up at my house.
can we just commit to a day? And what's a convenient day for you? So
Yeah.
we found a 14-year-old girl in the neighborhood. Her mom would bring her over. She'd doing some like childcare for our church at the time. And we didn't know her personally, but we had friends that said she was great.
But we were desperate.
And
so
we were
at that
desperate.
point,
And so we said, hey, here's the vision. We need something every week. We need childcare every week. Is there a night where you're like, I got nothing going on. I don't want to take away your Friday nights or
Yeah.
weekends. She's like, Tuesday nights, I got nothing going on.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Can we pay you every Tuesday? Come to the house.
just
this
show up
time,
at our house, whether we tell you or don't tell you. Like, just show
and we'll
up there.
pay you every single time. And what we did is we gave each other permission to be like, hey, we're gonna have a weekly date night,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean we have to plan anything
Or get dressed
or
up.
get dressed up.
Or
Like,
have, yeah.
the day might
Mhm.
absolutely suck. We might have poop on our face as we're running out the door. Like, I don't want to see my kids. Just take them.
I remember there were days when like we were saying hi to each other for the first time getting into the car.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay,
Yeah.
hi,
Hi.
nice to see you.
So when we say
I'm Shay,
weekly
I'm your
date night,
wife.
picture that, like exhausted, like nothing
What are we gonna
changed
do?
about our
Yeah.
season of life. But
Mhm.
what changed was intentionally planning and setting aside. I mean, it wasn't much, like, you know,
And we were broke at the time.
Broke
So
as a joke.
again, this wasn't even like going out to dinner. At that
No,
point in time,
'cause-
this was going to Barnes & Noble because it was
Yeah.
free and splitting a piece of
cheesecake.
cheesecake
Yeah.
at Barnes '& Noble because it would cost $3.99.
because all our money went to the babysitter.
Exactly.
But the point wasn't to go out and have it like, I love date night now. Like it's kind of stupid how much money we'll spend at a restaurant. It's fun. But like we're in a different season than we were
different
back
season.
then. It was like, I just need some time to connect with you.
Yeah.
And sometimes we didn't even go anywhere. We would just walk around the
Yep,
neighborhood.
or ride bikes. I remember riding bikes
Yep.
one time, walking around. I remember us having fights and like me crying like on walks.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're literally that's your first chance to do real life and have an honest
Yeah.
conversation. Like, so what's beautiful, and I can't remember if we've talked about this yet on this show. We've talked about it when we've spoken together, but it's those times at bat that are so valuable there that when you're not having a once a month date night, it doesn't have the same pressure to go well and everyone feels romantic and you know I smell good and I look good and we're only having pleasant conversation.
Yeah.
When you're having a weekly date night, rain or shine, sometimes you're going to be talking about finances, sometimes you're going to be talking about wins, sometimes you're going to be talking about a day that went well, sometimes you're going to be talking about how we haven't had sex in 3 weeks and we didn't talk about it. Like sometimes you're crying at the dinner table, sometimes it's wonderful, but it takes the pressure off of it being awesome and
Yeah, I don't
perfect
wanna
and
ruin this date
romantic and
night,
all
yeah.
that kind of stuff. It's just like this was our chance where it's just about us. And I think the other thing that we did that was helpful was we did get good at the end of the day when we'd both come home from work because we both own our own businesses, but we still had like a cutoff time. So call it 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember there was a time where we would say the kids have to play and we would go sit out on the swings
Oh, yeah.
or somewhere in the
Yeah.
house. If it was in the bedroom, like the kids knew, okay, mommy and daddy are both home. We're all together, but mommy and daddy are having their own like connection time. And sometimes we'd have a glass of wine
Yeah.
and, or not. Maybe it was just 30 minutes, but
Yeah.
it was like, it was prioritized time that before the chaos of like, yep, we got to get
The
dinner
evening
and
rhythms,
the
yeah.
evening and all of that. And yeah, the kids are kind of wilding out. Even if this means we got to put on cartoons for 30 minutes or something like that, it established within our home and within our family that like mom and dad's relationship comes first.
Yeah.
The same thing's true when you take a vacation, just the two of you, and you get a sitter and the kids are like, why don't we get to come? And you're like, because you want mommy and daddy to stay married.
Oh, man,
like,
yeah.
Mommy and daddy have to be connected. And to be connected, we have to have time alone together to talk. So all of those things. But I think the weekly, if you're only going to do one thing, like, can you just find one night a week that you really, build a wall around and you agree that this is sacred time and we're going to get a sitter and it doesn't matter what we end up doing during that time, but it's going to be just us and we're going to make it happen. You can tackle all the other 4 issues that we've brought up and all your own plethora of issues during that time.
They don't have issues. They're great.
It's mostly just
us.
us.
Yeah, it's just us.
So that's it. That's all of our problems, right? Just those 5, just 5 tidy things.
That's all I want to talk about today. That's enough. That is enough. So what, like, the question for you is, maybe one of these resonated with you. Which one resonated with you? Is there one that you're like, you know what, that's something we struggle with? And if not, what's coming to the surface for you in this moment? This is my teacher hat, forgive me, but what's coming to the surface for you this moment? There's something there. Like, if you're like, man, whatever's bubbling up, just take a note of it, jot it down in a note. Like, if you're listening to this by yourself, like, hey, maybe this is something I want to bring up with my spouse or something I just want to pray about or think about for a little bit.
You can send this to your spouse as a passive-aggressive way of bringing up an issue.
100%. That's what this podcast is for. You don't even have to do anything. Just be like, hey, I heard this was really good.
Just slide into their DMs.
Or you can even lie and be like, I just started listening to this. I think it's going to be really, really good, even though you have listened to the whole thing by now. So anyway, my hope is that you're not just going to, happy clap for us, that you think about your own marriage, because we want you to win. And we want, if your marriage wins, your kids win.
Yeah.
And if your marriage wins, your business wins. If your marriage wins, your community wins. The marriage is the most important part of your family, even if you're in the throes of raising young kids, which is why I feel like that last one is relevant for a lot of you. So just fight for the marriage, and it is a fight. It's not perfect, but it's worth it.
I'm glad to be married to you, though.
Thank you. Physical
I would
touch.
still pick you.
Oh, I would still pick you.
Touch.
You should be good for a week now,
awesome.
right? I touched your shoulder. Can we be good for a week?
And I said that I liked your hair.
Okay, great.
So you're good now,
You don't have to give me any words for another month.
Before we close out, what's one thing that you're thankful for, grateful for today?
I am so grateful that the weather warmed up again and we could go for a nice walk today.
Right? Because winter below 70 degrees is just unacceptable.
Yeah, something's wrong if it's below 70 in Florida in the winter. And it's back up to normal temperatures. It was lovely today.
Yeah.
What about you? What are you grateful for?
Oh, I'm grateful, always grateful for date day. I'm grateful for our walk that we took, and it was just really beautiful and peaceful and good to connect. Yeah. I'm grateful for that. I love that we take Friday walks.
Yeah.
And that they're like a long 2-hour walk. I think we started that this past year.
Yeah.
And that's been really fun.
Yeah, we've had great conversations. We have good ideas, sometimes hard conversations, but it's been a good venue for talking about things.
Yep.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed the episode. I know we did. Thanks for tuning in. Again, if you're enjoying these initial episodes, just let us know. If you're like, hey, this is a show I'd love to see more of, let us know. If not, we got other stuff we got to do. We
got dishes to do.
We got to do a whole episode like our schedule. Like, what's happening with our schedule? We keep taking things off and then more things pop up. So we got stuff. But if you like it, we'll keep doing it. So we appreciate your time. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you in another episode, Bills.
Bye.